with my homeboy, you know what I'm saying? Nut the Kid, aka Kid, you know what I'm saying? It's a big day for him.
In front of your mom, right?
Yeah, in front of my mom. I mean, I'm talking to my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You know, I'm in the car because I feel it coming. It's like, you know, I felt it coming. The week before that, you know what I'm saying, the same tried to run down on me by my mama house. And the neighbors had called. Like, yo, they got some, you know what I'm saying? They were trying to, you know, run down on your son, whatever. This top on right rap, hold it down for my homie in the nightcap. I keep a secret, but nobody know it.
Before Kid Kid became 50 Cent's most trusted soldier, he lived through betrayal, blood, and rebirth. His story reads like a street scripture written in pain and perseverance. You feel every part of it because this man's journey wasn't just about music, it was about survival.
Praise to the big dog, you know what I'm saying, 50, you feel me?
Once upon a time, he was Lil Wayne's protege, a young voice shaping the sound of Young Money, helping to build that early empire before most people even knew his name. But fame's a tricky thing. It comes fast, it blinds you, and it can vanish just as quick. Somewhere between the miscommunication, the silence, and the shifting alliances, Kid Kid found himself in the dark, cut off from the very machine he helped feed.
They say Wayne discovered you. You was on the streets.
It was more of like my big homie from around my way, you know what I'm saying? He went to school with most of the people that Wayne was around every day. He went to school with them, so he knew them. And he pulled up in front of my door. I'm like, come on, you ready? I'm like...
Then came the night that would change everything. 6 bullets ripped through his body right in front of his mother's house. It was chaos, blood, and disbelief all at once. That moment could have ended his story, but instead, it became the spark that reignited his purpose.
Just looking under the car, all I could see is his feet. You know what I'm saying? He's still shooting. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, for real, man. Got like 36 times.
Because every legend has an origin. And for Kid Kid, this was where it all began. Curtis Stewart, before the world knew him as Kid Kid, was just Nut Dog Kid from the 9th Ward of New Orleans, a place that raised him hard and fast. In those rough streets, loyalty came with a price, and every lesson was learned the hard way. Life didn't hand out mercy, it handed out consequences, and Kid learned to fight for everything he had. And betrayal. It could wear a smile and shake your hand while planning your downfall. Before the deals, before the fame, before anyone called him Kid Kid, he was just Nut the Kid, a young hustler from the 9th Ward trying to make something out of nothing. Every day was a grind, every decision a gamble, and the only thing more dangerous than poverty was trusting the wrong person.
Now, there was also a time in your career where you were going under the name Nut the Kid?
Yeah, Nut the Kid. I was Nut the Kid, Peanut Flame. You know what I'm saying?
Kid Kid once called himself a poverty poet, and that title fits like a crown. His lyrics weren't fantasies, they were scars turned into sentences. Every bar he spit carried truth, loss, and survival. His music wasn't about clout, it was about release. In his city, dreams didn't come easy. The only way out was through a microphone and a miracle.
I'm a poverty poet. I spit my life, I just quoted. Finally kicked the door in. Wait, let me look before I go in. You'll do the same thing if that was your kid.
His break came when he was just 15 years old, a kid chasing respect, not fame. One afternoon, he was freestyling outside with his crew when fate itself pulled up in the form of Lil Wayne. This wasn't some staged label audition or PR stunt. This was real life, raw, and unscripted. A neighborhood OG who knew Kid Kid's potential made the intro, and Wayne, curious and confident, wanted to see what the young spitter could do.
They say Wayne discovered you. You was on the streets.
It was more of like my big homie from around my way, you know what I'm saying? He went to school with most of the people that Wayne was around every day. He went to school with them, so he knew them. And he pulled up in front of my door. I'm like, come on, you ready? I'm like, yeah.
Kid Kid barely got 4 bars in before Lil Wayne lost his mind. The man started jumping around, hyped out of his mind, yelling that he'd just found something special. That night, something legendary was born. Scat Up, a crew of hungry New Orleans rappers ready to show the world that the South wasn't just listening anymore, it was speaking loud.
Remember what the name of the song in reference is?
It was probably like Squad Up 3. You know what I mean? Like around Squad 3.
The lineup was stacked. Lil Wayne, Kid Kid, then Nut Dog Kid, Gudda Gudda, T Streets, and a few others, all armed with pure hunger and fire. Between 2002 and 2003, they dropped 7 iconic mixtapes under the SQ series, raw, gritty, and revolutionary. Those tapes didn't just make noise, they laid the foundation for what would later become Young Money's DNA. From the block to the booth, Kid Kid helped carve out a sound that would reshape Southern rap forever. Kid Kid was there from the jump, literally in the room when the Young Money name was first spoken into existence. He helped shape the roots of what would become one of hip-hop's biggest movements. But when fame starts knocking, not everybody gets invited inside. By 2004, the dream began to crack at the edges. Lil Wayne was leveling up fast. The Carter era was about to take over the world, and as Wayne's star rose, the rest of Ska started fading into the background. Kid Kid remembered that shift all too well. The energy changed, the spotlight got smaller, and suddenly recognition was running out. By 2008, it seemed like the tables might finally turn again. The hit single, Mrs. Officer, was everywhere. Platinum, Billboard charts, radios blasting it non-stop. It was supposed to be Kid Kid's grand reintroduction to the world. The voice everyone heard crooning that unforgettable hook, that was him. But when the music video dropped, his face was nowhere to be seen. Fans saw the video, heard his vocals, but didn't see the man behind them. It was like he'd been erased from his own comeback. He later revealed the timing couldn't have been worse. Just as the video was being filmed, a hurricane had devastated New Orleans, leaving his family stranded and struggling. Instead of chasing fame, Kid Kid did what any real one would do. He took his first publishing advance and went straight to Atlanta to rescue his people, using his money to bring them home safe. When the cameras started rolling, he wasn't there. Not because he didn't care, but because family came first. But the industry doesn't wait for real life. When he got back, the moment had already passed. No call, no explanation, just silence. The door had quietly closed. Kid Kid never called it beef. He called it principle. To him, loyalty meant everything, and when that loyalty broke, he refused to beg for a seat at the table. He walked away from the Young Money circle and went back home to the only grind he ever knew, the streets. But that decision came with a heavy price. Because in New Orleans, when you lose your momentum, the streets don't hand out sympathy. They hand out targets. The city that raised him was the same one that was about to test him. The buzz, the fame, the music, it all disappeared overnight. And just days after meeting a man who would soon change his life forever, Kid Kid found himself staring death in the face. When he walked away from Young Money, he didn't walk into peace. He walked straight back into the fire. New Orleans wasn't waiting to celebrate his return. It was waiting to test him. Every corner carried danger. Every step could be his last. But legends aren't born in safety. They're forged in chaos. And for Kid Kid, that test was coming fast, wrapped in bullets, betrayal, and destiny. The streets of the Ninth Ward don't forget you. Ever. Everybody knows your name, your family, your past, and your every move. You can't disappear there, even if you want to. By June 2011, Kid Kid had returned home, trying to rebuild, trying to find focus again after everything that had fallen apart. But fate had already written the next chapter of his story, and it was waiting for him right around the corner. Just 4 days before the nightmare that would change everything, Kid Kid had crossed paths with 50 Cent for the first time, a meeting that felt like destiny itself. The connection was instant, real, recognizes real. It wasn't just business. It was energy, mutual respect, a sense that both men had walked through fire and survived. But back in New Orleans, that kind of news spreads fast, too fast. And in a place where envy runs deeper than opportunity, that kind of buzz can turn deadly.
Same path of destruction, bumming, starving, stomach talking.
It happened right outside his mother's house, a place that was supposed to be safe ground. Kid Kid had just dropped her off after leaving his daughter's birthday party, a moment meant to be pure joy, a rare break from the chaos. He'd even left his guns at home for once, just wanting one peaceful day surrounded by love instead of paranoia. But in New Orleans, peace is fragile, and sometimes one small act of faith can change everything. As he sat in the car, 2 masked men stepped out from the shadows like ghosts, their intentions clear. His mother stood frozen in the doorway, forced to watch her worst fear unfold before her eyes. Kid Kid barely had time to react. No gun, no armor, just instincts. Heart racing, he reached for his phone, trying to call out for his partner, yelling for backup, praying it wasn't too late. Before the night went quiet, the air split open with gunfire. The shooter came armed with a carbon 15 rifle, unleashing pure chaos. Reports said between 36 and 42 bullets tore through the car like it was paper. Kid Kid was hit 6 times, in his leg, abdomen, and side. The force was brutal, but in those first few seconds, he didn't even feel the pain. It was shock, just numbness, confusion, and the heavy realization that his body wasn't listening anymore.
Open the passenger side door, right? The whole time, dude still letting loose. My mind was telling me, yeah, you know what I'm saying, get out of there and go. But nigga, my body ain't do nothing but fall. Bloop.
He tried to move, dragging himself across the seat, desperate to reach the passenger door, his only shot at escape. Every movement felt slower than time itself. When he finally managed to push the door open, his strength gave out completely. He collapsed hard onto the ground, gasping for air as his vision blurred and the sound of bullets tore through the night. Through the smoke and flashing lights, he could see the shooter's feet, still firing, still raining destruction. He was sure this was it, that they were coming to finish the job. Then, suddenly, silence. The gunfire stopped. The shooters were gone. Kid Kid lay there bleeding out on the pavement, time stretching into eternity. He wasn't thinking about the fame, the music, or revenge. He just wanted to hear his kids' voices one more time. That was the only thought keeping him awake as his blood pooled beneath him. When the paramedics finally arrived, they found a body that looked broken beyond saving. But he was still breathing. Somehow, through sheer will, Kid Kid had survived what should have been his final chapter. The hospital stay that followed was long, painful, and filled with uncertainty. The bullets had shredded muscles and torn through organs. Surgeons worked around the clock to patch him back together, fitting him with a colostomy bag that he'd have to wear for nearly 10 months. When he finally woke up, surrounded by machines and tubes, he barely recognized his own body. His music career, his movement, even his confidence, all of it felt gone. He later called it the darkest period of my life. But under all that pain, something else began to grow. A spark, a silent determination. Because legends don't die when their bodies break. They rise when their spirit refuses to quit. And deep inside, Kid Kid was already plotting his rebirth. Hunger, purpose. Those were the only things keeping Kid Kid alive when everything else was falling apart. Even with bullets still lodged in his leg, he was already thinking about the comeback, about proving he wasn't done yet. Lying in that hospital bed, stitched up and barely conscious, he felt the weight of everything all at once. The pain, the betrayal, the silence from people who used to call him bro. The industry has a cruel rule. Once you're wounded, you're a liability. Labels move on, friends go ghost, and loyalty suddenly costs too much. But when Kid Kid's phone finally lit up after surgery, it wasn't a label executive, a friend, or even family calling to check in. The first name that popped up on that screen was Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent. And when he answered, the voice on the other end wasn't filled with pity, it was filled with power. 50 Cent knew exactly what that moment felt like. The confusion, the tubes, the lights, the helpless feeling of trying to breathe through pain. He'd been there before, 9 bullets deep. Same struggle, same betrayal, same will to survive. And what he said to Kid Kid that day became the foundation of everything that came next. His first words were simple but heavy. When I got hit, my label left me. But I ain't gonna do you like that. That one line changed everything. It was more than support, it was a promise. 50 saw something in Kid Kid that reminded him of himself. A fighter, a survivor, a man who'd been to hell and crawled back out. Just a few weeks before the shooting, 50 had actually discovered Kid Kid through a remix of his own track, Better Walk. At first, 50 thought someone was just jacking his hook, trying to ride his wave. But when he actually listened to the verse, what he heard stopped him cold. There was no imitation there, just raw hunger and pain in every word. 50 later said straight up, Kid Kid killed that song. That verse got his attention so fast that within days, he reached out personally and invited Kid Kid to meet up on a movie set where he was filming. And when Kid Kid showed up, he didn't come solo. He pulled up New Orleans style. Deep. A full crew, armed, alert, moving like the streets were watching. Most industry execs would have panicked or called security, but not 50. He just laughed, looked around, and asked, "What kind of guns y'all holding?" He didn't see danger. He saw familiarity. He understood it. That's when 50 decided to test him for real. He handed Kid Kid 5 instrumentals inside his studio van and said, "Take these home and write." But instead of leaving, Kid Kid locked in right there on the spot. No delay, no hesitation. He went straight to work. That move impressed 50 immediately. Because when real hunger meets opportunity, you don't walk away, you perform. That moment sealed it. It wasn't just another artist meeting a mogul. It was 2 survivors recognizing the same fire in each other. From that day forward, Kid Kid wasn't just another rapper trying to make it. He was stepping into a new chapter, one built on resilience, loyalty, and second chances under the mentorship of a man who'd been through the same storm and come out stronger. Kid Kid didn't waste a single second. He stayed right there on set and recorded all 5 tracks before 50 Cent even finished filming. That was the real test, and he passed it with flying colors. No excuses, no hesitation, just pure dedication. 50 saw it instantly. This wasn't just another hungry artist. This was someone built for the long game. Then came the shooting, the night that nearly ended it all. But instead of backing away like most people do when things get dark, 50 Cent stepped up. He called the hospital, checked in, and made sure Kid Kid knew he wasn't alone. When Kid Kid finally recovered enough to move again, 50 didn't give him time to drown in self-pity. He put him straight to work. Still barely healed, still wearing that colostomy bag, Kid Kid was on a mission. His first stop? Atlanta! That's where he recorded his verse on Tony Yayo's Haters, featuring 50 and Shawty Low. That same night, still weak, still stitched up, they shot the music video. Kid Kid moved slow, but his pride wouldn't let him show pain. The man was a walking battle scar, but his energy said, "I'm here to stay," and he didn't stop there. The very next day, he was on a plane to Africa, performing in front of thousands. His wounds hadn't even fully closed, but he was out there on stage, giving everything he had. That moment wasn't about fame. It was about proving he belonged, proving he could stand shoulder to shoulder with a powerhouse like 50 and still hold his own. Everywhere 50 went, Kid Kid went too. Not as a hype man or backup, but as a soldier, one learning how to move in an empire. He quickly learned there's a difference between being signed and being chosen. And 50 made it clear. Kid Kid wasn't just another name on a roster. He was living proof that loyalty doesn't come from money. It's earned through blood, scars, and second chances. By July 2011, Kid Kid was officially signed to G-Unit Records. But this was more than a business move. It was a brotherhood, forged by survival. He'd been tested by life, and now he was part of a legacy built on resilience and power. By 2014, the transformation was complete. Kid Kid had healed, physically, mentally, and musically. His scars had hardened into symbols of loyalty, each one telling a story of pain turned into purpose. So when 50 Cent called for a G-Unit reunion at Hot 97's Summer Jam, Kid Kid didn't hesitate for a second. He stood tall beside legends, Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo, Young Buck, and 50 himself, ready to hold the flag high. He wasn't the new guy anymore trying to earn respect. He was the new blood keeping the empire alive. Still, the whispers came, "Where's Buck? Where's Banks?" Fans were watching closely, comparing, questioning. But Kid Kid didn't let the noise get to him. He never tried to replace anyone. He came to add weight, to hold the line, and to prove that G-Unit still had soldiers who weren't afraid to bleed for what they stood for. When G-Unit came back together, the chemistry was instant, like they'd never missed a beat. By August 2014, the crew dropped The Beauty of Independence EP, 6 tracks of pure, unfiltered hunger. Critics called it a return to form. Banks' lyricism was razor sharp, Buck brought that wild energy, and 50 still commanded every beat with that signature power. But the one who lit the fire from the ground up, Kid Kid. He was the heartbeat of that project, the I've been shot and still show up to work kind of hunger that can't be faked. His verses came straight from the trenches, filled with pain, resilience, and purpose. You could hear the survival in his tone. Just months later, in March 2015, the crew followed up with The Beast is G-Unit. And this time, Kid Kid wasn't in the background. He was front and center on bangers like Chase the Paper. No more rookie energy, no more introductions. He'd earned his spot in the lineup for real. Then came the turning point. The moment that pushed Kid Kid's name into the spotlight in a whole new way. That same year, XXL magazine dropped their annual freshman class cover, the list that defines who's next up in the game. And there it was, Kid Kid's face. The internet went crazy. Social media exploded with disbelief. How is the guy from Mrs. Officer a freshman in 2015? The backlash was immediate, but XXL came with receipts. They revealed that Kid Kid wasn't an industry pick. He was the people's choice, earning over 240,000 votes from 139 countries. No label politics, no behind-the-scenes favors. This was real fan love. The editors doubled down, explaining that even though Kid Kid had been in the game for years, he'd never released a full solo album. That meant he still qualified, and more importantly, he deserved it. This wasn't nostalgia. It was rebirth. After years of setbacks, pain, and silence, he was finally getting his flowers. But fame has a dark side, and the higher you rise, the darker the shadows grow. Just hours before he was set to perform at the XXL freshman concert in New York City, Kid Kid's world flipped upside down. Again, undercover police arrested him on serious charges, accusing him of assaulting his ex-girlfriend, Marita Robinson. Before anyone even knew what was happening, photos surfaced online, claims, headlines, and chaos spreading at lightning speed. She alleged he'd beaten and strangled her in Las Vegas, and social media erupted in judgment before any facts came out. His legal team immediately fired back, calling the accusations completely false, saying the story was fabricated, and pointing out her past record of making false reports. But the damage was already done. The internet had taken sides before the truth even had a chance to speak. Once again, Kid Kid found himself in handcuffs. But this time, it wasn't the streets trying to take him down. It was the fame. The same spotlight that had just celebrated him was now burning him alive. But through all the noise, one man refused to flinch. 50 Cent. While others hesitated, 50 moved fast. Within hours, he wired $185,000 to cover Kid Kid's bail, making sure his soldier walked free. And he didn't just help behind the scenes, he stood by him publicly, calling the whole situation dirty work. To 50, it was obvious what was happening. When real ones start rising, the world tests them. That arrest could have ended Kid Kid's momentum, but instead, it revealed what separated him from the rest. Loyalty, grit, and a refusal to fold. He'd fought his way back from bullets and betrayal, and now he was staring down the weight of fame itself. Yet again, he was standing tall, with scars that told stories, and a mentor who wasn't about to let another fighter fall. The message was loud and clear. G-Unit protects its own. 50 Cent had made that known to the world, but once the spotlight faded, the legal storm followed Kid Kid back home to New Orleans. The same woman resurfaced, pressing similar charges, and suddenly the pressure was everywhere. Shows were canceled, interviews disappeared, and the phone calls stopped coming. The industry that once shouted his name was now whispering behind closed doors. By February 2016, Kid Kid decided to close that chapter quietly. He pleaded guilty to a harassment violation in New York, completed a batterer's program, and walked away without a criminal record. Legally, he was free. But in the music business, freedom doesn't always mean forgiveness. His name had been dragged through every headline imaginable, and in an industry built on image and perception, stains like that don't fade easy. Still, through all the noise, through the court cases, the scrutiny, the endless headlines, Kid Kid never lost his focus or his grounding. While other rappers were chasing hits, chart placements, and viral fame, he was chasing something bigger, purpose. For him, that purpose always pointed back to the place that made him, New Orleans. In August 2014, marking 9 years since Hurricane Katrina, Kid Kid released one of his most powerful and personal songs ever, Mr. Rogers. It wasn't a radio single or a mainstream grab. It was a confession, a haunting letter from a survivor who had seen his entire neighborhood nearly wiped off the map. Through that track, he spoke directly to the 9th Ward, the section of the city that took the hardest hit when the levees broke. His lyrics didn't just tell stories, they painted them. He described boarded-up houses, missing family members, water lines that still scarred the walls, and the eerie silence that came after the news cameras left. The world had moved on, but Kid Kid refused to let people forget. Mr. Rogers wasn't about fame. It was about memory, about keeping New Orleans' pain alive so it wouldn't be erased by time or politics. A year later, he turned that same pain into something visual. In August 2015, he released his own self-produced documentary, New Orleans Katrina, 10 years later. It wasn't backed by a network. It wasn't filtered through PR. It was raw, grassroots storytelling straight from his heart. He didn't want to give people a highlight reel. He wanted to show them reality. Through his lens, he brought the world face to face with the people who lived it. His mother, his barber, community leaders, and even kids who grew up surrounded by the wreckage. It wasn't polished or pretty. It was honest. That was exactly how he wanted it. No script, no filters, just truth. The film captured the heartbreak of return. Families who escaped the floods now couldn't afford to come back. The neighborhoods they grew up in had been rebuilt for the wealthy, not the survivors. The Ninth Ward, once a heartbeat of community and culture, had become a gentrified ghost of itself. Kid Kid said it best in one of his interviews. They rebuilt the city, but they didn't rebuild it for us. Those words hit different because they came from someone who had lived every lyric he'd ever written. While others used pain for aesthetics, Kid Kid used his to tell the truth. His art wasn't about profit, it was about preservation. He wasn't chasing streams, he was chasing justice. Not the kind found in courtrooms, but the kind found in remembrance. In making sure the people who were forgotten had their stories told, their faces seen, and their voices heard. They fixed the business districts and the upper-class spots, but they ain't fixing homes. That one line from Kid Kid cut deep. It summed up exactly what the people of New Orleans had been screaming for years. The city's recovery looked good on postcards and tourism ads, but the truth was ugly. The rich got rebuilt, and the poor got forgotten. The people who made the city what it was were being priced out of their own neighborhoods. For Kid Kid, this wasn't charity. It was duty. He felt a calling to speak for the ones who didn't have a platform. Being a voice for his people mattered more than any award or industry cosign. The same raw pain that used to pour through his verses now flowed into activism and storytelling. He wanted to flip the whole narrative, turning stereotypes about the hood into stories of strength. Every scar, every loss, every lyric became proof that survival was its own kind of victory. But as Kid Kid poured more of his soul into his city, another realization started creeping in. After years of riding under the G-Unit flag, touring, recording, grinding, and rebuilding his name, he had reached that point every soldier dreams about, becoming his own general. The student was ready to lead. In 2018, Kid Kid made it official. He announced he was parting ways with G-Unit Records to go fully independent. He wasn't leaving out of anger or beef. There were no sneak disses, no drama, no headlines full of shade. It was a move made in peace and mutual respect. Because deep down, both men knew the mission had been accomplished. 50 Cent had given Kid Kid exactly what he needed. The blueprint to build his own empire. He launched his own label, RLLNR Entertainment, short for Realionaire Records. The name said it all, realer than millionaire. It wasn't just about money, it was about authenticity. It was for the hustlers, the survivors, the dreamers who'd been overlooked but never gave up. Under RLLNR, Kid Kid was free to move how he wanted, say what he wanted, and create on his own terms. When reflecting on that moment, Kid Kid said something that perfectly summed up his mindset. You can't expect your big bro to hold your hand forever. He showed me how to move. That statement wasn't just respect, it was growth. It was him stepping into his own power, carrying the lessons 50 taught him and applying them his way. He had evolved from a wounded artist into a self-made leader, from someone fighting for survival to someone shaping his own legacy. Now it's on me to build my own, Kid Kid said proudly in an interview. 50 never dropped me.
With 50, like, you know, I see that and like, oh, you did, 'cause 50 dropped you. No, he didn't, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I'm around for the music. You feel me? So I gotta keep it going. You know what I mean? You know, it's no bad blood.
And he meant it. Under his label, RLLNR Entertainment, short for Realionaire Records, Kid Kid started creating exactly what he'd always dreamed of, music that was fully his, no middlemen, no limitations. In 2018, he dropped 2 back-to-back projects, the Unquestionable EP and the Realionaire Volume 1 mixtape. Both carried that same fiery spirit. A man finally in control of his art, his message, and his legacy. The label's slogan said everything you needed to know: real life, real money, real music. Every beat, every verse, every lyric carried weight. It was the sound of survival turned into success. Kid Kid's journey had officially come full circle. From getting shot 6 times in front of his mother's house to standing tall as an independent voice representing New Orleans with pride. He wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was building a foundation. After everything he'd lost, fought, and survived, he realized that the real prize wasn't fortune. It was freedom. From Nut Kid to Young Money protege to G-Unit soldier and now the Realionaire boss, Kid Kid's entire story has been built on one unshakable word: resilience. He survived betrayal, business politics, and the cold realities of the rap game. But every single time, he came back sharper, wiser, and more focused. The shooting that almost took his life, it became the lesson that defined it. The chaos that surrounded his fame, it turned into fuel for his independence. Every scar he carried became a lyric, and every setback became motivation. Because to Kid Kid, pain doesn't destroy purpose, it defines it. By 2024, Kid Kid's voice was still echoing through the streets of New Orleans, stronger, louder, and more respected than ever. That year, he reunited the city's energy with a powerful collaboration that made hip-hop stop and listen. The track? Yellow Tape, featuring the recently freed legend BG. That single wasn't just a record, it was a moment, a reunion of survivors. For BG, it marked a long-awaited comeback after spending more than a decade behind bars. For Kid Kid, it was validation, proof that he'd stayed solid through it all, that he'd outlasted every storm. It was 2 generations of New Orleans hip-hop coming together, not for clout, not for charts, but for loyalty and legacy. "We're not chasing trends, we're telling the truth," Kid Kid said in an interview, making it clear what drives him. The song didn't need radio spins or label backing. It spoke directly to the streets that raised them. It was a celebration of endurance, unity, and authenticity, the very essence of what hip-hop is supposed to be. But beyond the microphone, Kid Kid's real legacy is much quieter. He often says his biggest inspiration doesn't come from the game or the fame. It comes from his children. They're his anchor, his motivation, and his reason to keep moving smart, stay focused, and never lose himself again. He moves with patience now, speaks with purpose, and walks with gratitude. Because for Kid Kid, the dream was never about being the loudest voice in the room. It was about being the realest one in it. In one interview, Kid Kid said something that perfectly captured his entire journey. "My kids remind me I can't crash out. I gotta show them what the building looks like." That one line hit harder than any verse, because in that simple truth lies his evolution. The man who once defined himself by street survival had transformed into a blueprint for growth, not just in music, but in life. He'd seen it all. The discovery under Lil Wayne, the trauma of being shot 6 times right in front of his mother's house, and the powerful mentorship of 50 Cent, who taught him the art of ownership and the value of standing on your own 2 feet. Through every trial, Kid Kid never lost the principle that got him out of the 9th Ward in the first place. You gotta make something out of nothing. And he lived by it. From flooded streets to international stages, from being silenced to becoming his own boss, from almost dying to living free, he turned every loss into fuel and every scar into strategy. Now, under his label, Realionaire Records, RLLNR, Kid Kid isn't chasing superstardom. He's building legacy. The kind of legacy that isn't measured in awards, plaques, or headlines, but in truth, loyalty and the strength to keep standing when everything tries to break you. In an industry obsessed with clout and image, Kid Kid chose integrity. While others chase trends, he's busy laying bricks, building something that lasts. His story isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about a man who refused to let pain define him and instead used it to refine him. He's not just a rapper from New Orleans. He's a symbol of what resilience looks like when it refuses to die. Proof that even when the world counts you out, you can still come back louder, wiser, and realer than ever. Because at the end of the day, Kid Kid doesn't just represent survival, he represents rebirth. From Nut Kid to G-Unit soldier to Realionaire boss, his journey is the living testimony that no matter how hard life hits, you can still rise, rebuild, and roar again. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you on the next one.